Morning, grade 5s. Nice to have you with me again today. I always do enjoy doing these lessons. I've got some tricks for you. I call them tricks, but really they're just shortcuts that you can use with your mental multiplication. Quite useful if you master them. It does take some time off quite a few of the things that you will do in maths. Okay. Reminder, as normal, email me, grade5@worksheetcloud.com. You can address it to Mr. T or Mr. Travis. Anything you have to do with maths that you'd like help with, something you want to cover in the future, something you want to point out if I've made a mistake in one of my answer sheets. It does happen. After the lesson, click on the link above, do the worksheet just to make sure that you've mastered the tricks that we are doing in this lesson. So the next sheet, as per normal, is mental arithmetic. Today is, you're going to do it and see whether you can get the answers. So it's 10 questions, it's 40 seconds. Sometimes you've got to give the answers, sometimes you've got to work back to the question. Your 40 seconds start now. Halfway. And time. If your times tables are good, you would have found this one easy. If your times table needs work, well, that would have been obvious too. I know it's probably a bit late to remind you of this today, but it's more important to get things right than to get things done quickly. Remember that in all your maths. So I would prefer you to do just 5 questions and get all 5 of them right than to rush through all 10 and only get 3 right. I mean, obviously 5 is a better mark than 3. Okay, so first of all, accuracy, then speed. Of course, we want both, but we first need accuracy. 7 times 11 is 77. If we're working backwards for number 2, something times 12 gives me 120. I particularly picked this one because it's something that one of the tricks we'll look at is multiplying when we've got 0. So the answer for 2 is 10. The missing number in number 3 is 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. 8 times 8 is 64. So the answer for number 4 is 64. 5, the missing number is 10. Number 6, the missing number is 5. Number 7, the answer is 20. Number 8, the missing number is 2. Number 9, the answer is 42. And number 10, the answer is 8. If you missed any of those, just rewind the video and go through it again. On to today's lesson. We are looking at those mental multiplication tricks. I am Mr. Travis. So if you email me, you can address it to Mr. Travis or Mr. T. I'll answer to both. Lesson goals: understand how to use the shortcuts when multiplying numbers that end in 0. That's one of the ones we're going to do. Then understand the idea of splitting up to multiply. We have covered this briefly, but we're going to go over it again. And then understand something that for many of you will be new, which is compensation. I think that familiarity with numbers makes compensation an easier option. But yeah, the more you play with numbers, the better your brain gets at working through them. My brain still picks up numbers wherever I can. I look out for number plates when I'm driving. The other day I saw CA 9999. It was quite fun. Okay, the first one, multiplying numbers that end in 0. I want to look at the first example, and I've put it as a pair. I haven't done one with 0. I've said 3 times 4 is 12. And then I've said 3 times 40 is 120. And what I really want you to notice is this. When we did 3 times 4, we got 12. When we did 3 times 40, we had a 0 over here, and we have a 0 over here. But the 12 part stays the same. And so really what happens is you put the 0 over here, and then you say 3 times 4 is 12, and you put it in front of the 0. I call these significant numbers. The 0 is not a significant number in this case. We just can move them across. We'll do some practice with that. Another example, 5 times 3 is 15, and 50 times 30 is 1,500. And you'll notice that over here I have a 0, and over here I have a 0, so that's 2 zeros. And over here I have 2 zeros. Interesting. 5 times 6 is 30. 5 times 60 is 300. I included this one because sometimes people might say, okay, well, there should just be a 1 0 over there. There was 1 0, but then the 5 times 6 gave you the other 0, and that's why it's over there. We'll do some more practice with those ones. I'm going to jump across to the worksheet, to the whiteboard, and just do a couple of these examples before I show you the next thing that we're going to look at. If you ever see me looking down and to the left, it's either because I'm looking at the paper with my questions on, or I'm looking at the time in the corner just to make sure I don't go over. So let's look at 70 times 5. So what I'm going to do is, I see that I've got a 0 there. I'm going to take my 0. I'm going to call it a smiling 0 or a happy 0 because it can get to be lazy. It doesn't have to do anything. What I'm now going to do is to go 7 times 5. 7 times 5 is 35. And so the answer to 70 times 30 is 350. So all you needed to do was to move that 0 down. So that's quite a lot quicker than if you actually sat down and worked that out using long multiplication. That's why I'm teaching you these tricks, so that you can go a bit quicker. Quicker, but still right. Let's try 30 times 40. This time, I have 2 zeros. So I'm going to make 2 smiling zeros or lazy zeros. Then I'm going to say 3 times 4, which is 12. And so the answer to 30 times 40 is 1,200, which is quite a lot easier than having worked all of those out. 2 more examples. I'd like you to try these ones on your own. 600 times 30 and 90 times 300. Right, I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to get those done. So on your with your pencil and paper, jot those down. If you'd like a bit more time, just pause the video. I have particular respect for people who, instead of watching, rather pause the video, make sure they've finished it first, and then go back. So we do learn by watching people do things, but we learn even better by doing those things ourselves and trying them, even if we get it wrong, because then we learn from our mistakes. So first finish it and then watch. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3 smiling zeros or lazy zeros, and I'm going to put them right down there so I can ignore them up in the question. And now I do 6 times 3, which is 18. So the answer to 600 times 30 is 18,000. If you like more time with 4, pause. Again, my smiling zeros, 1, 2, 3. You really don't need to draw the smiling faces in. I like to draw them in for cases like the one on the example. Well, you'll see on the next one. Okay, and 9 times 3 is 27. Times tables, people, times tables. Every lesson I end up saying the same thing. You must know your times tables and your mental arithmetic. Okay, number 5. 50 times 60. do that one quickly. I'll give you 20 seconds for this. Right, I'm going to take my two smiling zeros and put those down there. Then I'm going to go 5 times 6 is 30. And I guess the reason why I put this one in here is so that you can see that we can have a zero here that's not one of your smiling zeros. So the two zeros, the two smiling zeros, came from there. But then I said 5 times 6 is 30, and so I get an extra one. So 50 times 60 is 3,000. Let's look at the second one I want to look at today. And this is multiplying by splitting. We did discuss this one before, but what I'd particularly like us to start doing is to start doing this in our head. And I'll show you how. I jot down notes while I'm doing it so that I can make my thinking visible. But this is the sort of thing that I'd like to be able to do in your head. So you'll notice that when we're doing these, I've got a single digit times by a double digit, or a double digit times by single. I've always got one and the other. You can do it with two-digit numbers. It just needs more storage up in your head. And so I rather like to just keep this one for this, for when we've got a one-digit number times a two-digit number, because then you can do it in your head, which is quite nice. So I'm going to switch over to green for this one. I'll still write my questions in blue. I'm going to start my numbering system again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to times each of these separately. So first of all, it's important to realize that although that looks like a 6 and it is a 6, it represents 60 because it's in the tens column. So when I say 8 times 6, I'm actually saying 8 times 60. So 8 times 6 is 48. But 8 times 60, which we've just learned from our smiling zero, we can just put the 0 on the end. So 480, 8 times 60, 480. 8 times 5 is 40. 480 plus 40 is 520. And that's what I mean by doing it in your head. So you can jot these things down. And I'm going to continue to jot those down just to show my thinking on the screen so you can see what I'm doing. But then once I've done that, I then add those two numbers together in my head to get my answer. So all that you're going to see is the two green lines at the top and then my answer. And in fact, when you do this at school, when you're feeling confident with your mental arithmetic, you could just say to yourself, without jotting down, 8 times 60 is 480, and keep that in your head. 8 times 5 is 40. 380 plus 40 is 520. So that's ideally where you want to get to in the end, is getting these steps into your head. Okay, let's look at a second question. 7 times 43. And I'm going to do a third one as well. The third one I'd like you to try on your own, but I'm going to do the first. I'm going to do number 2 out loud. So first off, I'm going to say 7 times 40, because it's not 4, it's 40. 7 times 4 is 28, so 7 times 40 is 280. 7 times 3 is 21. 280 plus 21, 301. Okay, so you can see if I'd given you this problem, 7 times 43, it's quite a difficult looking problem. But with a little bit of working out in our head, we can get to 301 without too much difficulty. Okay, try number 3 yourselves. I'll give you half a minute. Okay, it's just less than half a minute, but let's go. So first up, I'm going to go 5 times 6, or 5 times 60. So 5 times 6 is 30. Because it's actually 60, we're going to put an extra 0, so it's 300. 5 times 3 is 15, so 5 times 63 is 315. I said we could do it with double-digit numbers. I'm going to demonstrate it for you, and then I'm going to you're going to maybe see why it's a little bit harder to do this kind of one in your head. Maybe you jot it down, which is also fine. 18 times by 45. All right, so first I'm going to go 10 times 40. So 2 zeros and 1 times 4, so that's 400. Then I'm going to go 10 times 5, which is 50. Then I'm going to go 8 times 40, which is 8 times 4 is 32, so 8 times 40 is 320. And then I'm going to go 8 times 5, which is 40. And now I've got to put all of those together. So for 50 plus 40 is 90, plus 20 is 110, plus 300 is 410, plus 400 is 810. So you can do it in your head, but that does take a little bit more working out when you're putting it back together by adding it. So you can do it, it's just a little bit more complex. So I would suggest that until you're really confident, you just stick to doing when you've got 1 digit times by 2 digits, right? Or because times can change direction, 2 times 1. It's the same thing. Let's do one of the ones where it's a 2-digit number times a 1-digit number. And this I'd like you to try on your own. And then we'll move on to the third method that we're going to look at today. So let's go with 57 times by 6. Right, if you'd like more time, then carry on. 57 times 6. I hope you could all hear that. Okay, right. So it doesn't matter whether the 2-digit number is at the front or at the back. We could change it around because times you can turn it around. We did learn that law. The commutative law. Doesn't matter if you know the name, just that you can swap it around. So I'm going to go 50 times 6. So 50 times 6 is 300. 7 times 6 is 42. So answer to 57 times 6 is 342. Let's have a look at the third trick that I'm telling you, the third shortcut. So this one, again, it's not important that you know the name. It's called multiplying by compensating. So what I want you to notice is if I look at the first one and I go 5 times 52, the answer is 260. You can check that if you like, but it is correct. But if I go 10 times 26, I'll also get 260. And what I really wanted you to notice, and maybe I should do the next one, maybe I'll do all 3 before I see if you have noticed it without it. So we look for patterns in maths. So let's look at the second example. 15 times 6 is 90, and 30 times 3 is also 90. Is there a relationship between these 2 numbers and between these 2 numbers? Let's look at the next one. 4 times 55 is 220, and 20 times 11 is also 220. This relationship might not be so easy to see. I hope some of you picked up the relationship. Over here, I have doubled. So 5 times 2 is 10. Over here, I have halved. So I doubled one and I halved the other, and I still get the same answer. Let's look at the second example. I doubled one, I halve the other, and I still get the same answer. Neat. All right, that's right. So if you double one and halve the other, you get the same answer. But also, if you times 1 by 3 and divide the other by 3, you'll get the same answer. In this one, we timesed by 5, and we divided by 5, and we get the same answer. Now, why is this useful? Perhaps the easiest one to see is the first one. So 5 times 52, I could do by splitting it up and multiplying and putting back together. But I know that when I've got a 10 or a number that ends with a 0, that makes things really easy because I can use my lazy 0 to get across. So I realized that I could times this by 2 and get a 10. And I know that if I do times 2 on that side and divide by 2, my answer is going to be the same, which is quite cool. And so what I did was I aimed to get a 10 on one side or a number with 0, like over here. And I did that so that I could do easy multiplication. So over here, I doubled this one to get a 30, which has a 0 on the end. Then I put a lazy 0 down. I said 3 times 3 is 9, and I get my final answer. This is probably the most tricky of the three. And until you're familiar with numbers, it might be the one that you don't see quite as often. I wouldn't say struggle, because you can still do multiplying without knowing how to do any of these tricks. This is just tricks that help you get the multiplication done quicker and in your head. Let's look at some examples with this one. So this is called compensating. Again, not important if you know the name, but that's what it is. So let's see, the first example I'm going to look at is 5 times 82. I'm going to use purple for these. So I noticed that 5 I could make into a nice number, 10. To do that, I times by 2. And if I times by 2 over that one, I have to divide by 2 or halve the other one. So half of 82 is 41. Hope you'll be able to do that for my division. So I said 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 8 4 times. Okay, so there's that step, and obviously this is nice and easy because 1 times 41 is 41. And there's my lazy 0, and the answer is 410 or 410. Cool. Let's look at another example. 2. Maybe try this one yourselves, because this is a similar example to the first one. The last one I will help you with because I've picked some slightly bigger numbers, the kind that you might not see on your own. So you've got 30 seconds and go. Right, so I noticed that 5 I can get to 10 quite easily. So I times that by 2. And on this side, if I times that by 2, I've got to divide that by 2. So very similar to the first question. Half of 44 is 22. Timesing them together, 10 times 22. Well, I've got my lazy 0, and then I go 1 times 22, 22, and there's my answer. Okay, I've decided to slip in an extra example, which you guys can do. So let's go 12 times by 5. I picked an easy one, but I did just want to show you with this example that it doesn't matter which side the 1-digit number and which side the 2-digit number is. I'm just going to write down number 4, and then I'm going to do both examples. So with number 3, I noticed that I can get the 5 to a nice number, so I can make that into a 10. And I did that by doubling, which means I need to halve this one. And half of 12 is 6. 6 times 10 is 60. There we go. So I did, yeah, you've got your smiling 0, and then 1 times 6, or 6 times 1 is 6. There we go. Okay, the last one I did say is numbers that you're not likely to be able to pick up until you've been doing maths for longer. Don't stress. You could do this by splitting. You could say 50 times 8 is 400, and 5 times 8 is 40, and the answer is 440. But what you can do, or what I noticed, is that if I times this one by 5, which means I need to divide that one by 5, I'm going to get a nice number, 40 and 11. And then what I do is I put my smiling 0 down. That's this one, and then I say 4 times 11 is 44, and there's my 440. These are tricks just to help you. If you end up not remembering these, that's okay. But I would say the most important one that you can remember, probably the most useful one, the one that's going to save you the most time, is this thing with the zeros on the end. That is just like really, really quick and really simple. All you got to remember is you drop your 0, your smiling 0, or your lazy 0, and then you do the significant numbers times by each other. 7 times 5 is 35, and you put that in front of your lazy 0. That is really nice, easy stuff. So if you remember only one of the 3, pick this one. If you're going to remember, pick this one and the splitting one. And if you're going to remember all 3, that's fantastic. That's great. Thank you for joining me today, grade 5s. It's been lovely to have you with me. Remember, email me, grade5@worksheetcloud.com, and click on the link above the video to do the worksheet for today. Make sure you've got this. Great. I'll see you in the next lesson. Goodbye.